Good morning. Javier Becerra, Attorney General for the great state of California. I'm joined by two of our litigators who are going to help me today, and I hope you'll recognize that a lot of work went into what we're about to announce today. Kathleen Foote is the Supervising Attorney General. Actually, it's the actual title is
The senior assistant.
Senior Assistant Attorney General. Got to get these right. A Senior Assistant Attorney General in our antitrust section for the Department of Justice. And Emilio Veronini is our Deputy Attorney General who will be handling the case we're about to discuss. I want to make sure I acknowledge Michael Jorgensen, who is a supervising Deputy Attorney General within the office in the same area, Cheryl Johnson, and Esther Law, who are both Deputy Attorney Generals who have been working on this matter as well. I do want to acknowledge as well Melanie Fontes Rainier, who's here, Rayner, I should say, who is here, and Ellie Bloom, who is here, both of whom are special assistants of mine who work on this particular matter and deal with health care in the case of Melanie, and in the case of Ellie, a lot of the consumer activities that we're involved in. Having said that, then let me just go ahead and launch. We're here to announce an action that the Department of Justice is taking today aimed at protecting the health of our economy. And we do that by protecting the health of our families in the state of California. Today, like so many days, families are making tough decisions. Do they pay the rent, or do they pay that medical bill? Even in California, a state that has seen remarkable success as a result of the Affordable Care Act, what we call Covered California here in California, in expanding access to quality, affordable health care, the cost of medical care is still on the rise. A growing body of research suggests that increased consolidation in healthcare markets is leading to higher prices for California families. A Los Angeles Times analysis recently found that Northern California's 6 most populous counties collect 56% more revenue per patient per day from insurance companies and patients than hospitals in Southern California's 6 largest counties. 56% more. And just this Monday, researchers at the University of California, Berkeley, released a report that showed how the consolidated market in Northern California has driven up prices for consumers. The cost of the average inpatient hospital procedure in Northern California, $223,000 plus, compared to the average cost for inpatient hospital procedures in Southern California of $131,000 plus. That's more than a $90,000 difference depending on where you live for essentially the same bundle of hospital inpatient procedures. Think of what that money means for a Northern California family that's trying to make a mortgage payment, a rent payment, afford child care, pay for a child's tuition, save for retirement. We filed a lawsuit yesterday against Sutter Health, California's largest hospital system, for anti-competitive business practices that raise prices for consumers in Northern California. It's time to hold healthcare corporations accountable and bring down illegally inflated healthcare costs that are imposed on California's families. We seek to stop Sutter from continuing this illegal conduct. Both Kathleen Foote and Emilio Veronini, who are here with me, are prepared to answer any questions about detailed aspects of our litigation. I want to thank them now for the work that they have done along with the team that I announced a little earlier. But it has been an exercise of preparation and diligence that has taken some 6 years to get us to this point to file this particular lawsuit. We intend to protect competition in the healthcare market here in California and to protect patients from artificially high prices for the health care for their family. Our investigation that we did found that Sutter engaged in several business practices that violate the Cartwright Act, a California law that protects consumers. We found that Sutter prevented insurance companies from negotiating with it under anything other than what are called all or nothing conditions, causing disruption and higher prices for patients. We found that Sutter restricted insurance companies from giving consumers more low-cost health plan options that they could choose from. And we found that Sutter set excessively high out-of-network prices and impeded transparency by restricting publication of provider cost information and rates that consumers could then use to make good choices. The consequences of these practices for Northern California families are and have been real. The consequences for our economy are and have been real. At the California Department of Justice, we're committed to doing everything we can to help families access affordable, quality health care. We have assembled a healthcare strike force that is focused on protecting healthcare access and rights, ready to move quickly when access to care is threatened. At the Department of Justice, we've also led legal efforts to protect a woman's access to birth control and to compel the Trump administration to make legally required payments that help people afford their insurance. In addition, our antitrust enforcement team has a track record of helping keep California's markets competitive. Last year, we joined a federal lawsuit to charge 6 generic drug makers with an illegal conspiracy to increase prices for important pharmaceuticals. And this past summer, when oil giant Valero tried to acquire the last independent oil distribution terminal in Northern California, we took action and we stopped Valero from further consolidation of the gasoline market here in California. This action we take today against Sutter Health is just our latest effort to protect access to quality, affordable health care in California, for the health of our families and for the health of our economy. As California's Attorney General, I am committed to protecting and growing the economy of this great state and to protecting the hardworking families who make our state so strong. With that, we'll take any questions you might have. Yes.
I don't know who this might be for, but
I don't either, so.
how did this come about 6 years ago? You said 6 years ago. What was sort of the thing that brought about this investigation?
There's a history, and let me have Kathleen give us a little bit of that, because this is a case that didn't just spring up. This has been ongoing. So let me have Kathleen give us some remarks.
Can you also get the spelling of your last name?
Sure. Yes. It's Kathleen Foote, F-O-O-T-E. We first, certainly, we've always paid attention to what's going on in healthcare markets, but we first began getting complaints about the practices that show up in this case, and about a number of other concerns relating to contracting. 6-7 years ago, we ultimately embarked on a rather broad investigation that didn't just involve Sutter, that involved looking at practices, contracting practices by hospitals around California. So this is all done under our confidential investigative authority. So I'm not going to talk a lot about what went on in it. But it was a broad investigation. Ultimately, it came to focus particularly on the practices that are alleged in the complaint, we have, over the course of time, in addition to those explicit facts that you see in the complaint, we became aware that this type of situation where you do have a dominant provider in an area, and that provider begins to use its dominance in order to sort of really suck the competitiveness out of the market, whatever competitiveness there might be, is something we began to hear about from some other states. It's not a situation that exists in every state, but that particular kind of configuration does exist in several other states, and in North Carolina, there is actually litigation not too different from this brought by the North Carolina AG and the U.S. Department of Justice, which we've been watching very closely. There's been a more regulatory approach taken to address the same kinds of problems in Massachusetts and I believe also in Rhode Island. So it's a very complicated market. It's a very detailed fact situation, so there's no obvious precedent for it. But it's something that we believe does fall under the antitrust laws. It's directly related to the competitiveness of the market, and that is what we really zoned in on in the course of our investigation.
So you heard from consumers complaints, frustrations?
Oh, we heard complaints from consumers, and we heard complaints from any number of employers, which are the ones who very often are paying the freight, whether they're buying commercial insurance or whether they are self-insured, as a great many of them in California are.
Yeah, I know this lawsuit was filed, but how can Californians feel confident this isn't going to happen anymore?
So let me
Yes.
get back to. If we do nothing, it will continue to happen, and we have to try to make the case here. Just as I mentioned, oil giant Valero thought it would be possible for it to buy the last independent distributor of the oil that Valero refines, which would have allowed Valero and the refiners to control the spigot for gasoline in the Northern California market, which you and I know would have led to spiking in gas prices whenever they decided to close the spigot a bit and create a shortage. We have to make it clear that there's no reason why you or I should have to pay $90,000 more so that our son or daughter can visit a hospital in Northern California as opposed to Southern California. And so we've got to start somewhere. We think after the 6 years or so of examination and collection of documents, we've got a case that there's been an abuse of the laws to allow a very large provider within the healthcare sector to game the system. And so we're going to make the case. These are not easy. These are not the seductive kind of cases because they take a lot of facts. They take a ton of time. It's a whole bunch of attorneys who we know we're going to be aligned against. But we think we've done a pretty good job of collecting the evidence that shows that there's no justification for the differential of $90,000 between a service in one part of the state and a service in a different part of the state.
Have you been able to determine what that total may be after these 6 years? You've mentioned that difference of $90,000. What does that look like, that grand total?
Yeah, see, and this is where it starts to become evident that this is big stuff, or as Joe Biden would say, big deal, a big F deal, right? That's one incident where you may take your child to the hospital, $90,000. There are 40 million Californians who go to the hospital all the time. This is years in the making. There are lots of variables and lots of multiplication signs. It's big money.
Can you say what it is?
Come to the courthouse and watch some of the cases as we develop this. Yes.
One more question for you, just while I have your attention. there may be people at home who are watching and saying, 6 years, this is a long time. Why wasn't this suit brought earlier?
These are. Have you ever heard of an antitrust case that has popped up in a matter of weeks? And you do no, these things take a lot of time because almost by function, you've got to develop a record because this isn't just one case. You can always distinguish. Well, your son needed to go to the hospital, and his conditions were so and so. My daughter's conditions were slightly different, and therefore the differential in cost. But over time, you start to collect enough evidence. And most antitrust cases require a great deal of perspective in time so you can develop the case that indeed it's not reasonable to see the difference in pricing. And so it does take time. These are very difficult cases. They're time intensive, fact intensive, and you better know the law really well. And they come at you with every attorney they can throw at you. So, yes.
Kathy Anderson with the Sacramento Bee. I am kind of curious about whether there are other health companies that you are looking at, whether you've received complaints about other companies that operate in Northern California, and whether you are taking a look at them as well.
Kathy, I'm glad you're curious about that. I'm going to have to keep you curious. We don't disclose our investigations. I suspect you didn't know after 6 years that we were preparing to do this, and that's because we don't talk about our investigations. But we're investigating. I can't say where or whom or what or when, but we're continuing to try to do the job we can to protect the good people of the state of California. And we hope that what we do is send a signal through this case that watch what you do. Obey the law. Other questions? Sí, este día anunciamos que el Departamento de Justicia toma acción legal contra Sutter Health, un sistema de hospitales y de servicios médicos más grande que cualquier otro sistema en el norte de California, que tiene miles de empleados, doctores, etcétera, y que provee servicios a millones de habitantes aquí en California. Encontramos nosotros, después de una investigación extensiva, de que Sutter Health ha cobrado más para sus servicios que lo que es justo bajo la ley. Y hoy tomamos acción legal para comprobar que Sutter Health está violando la ley y queremos ver que cualquier familia que necesita usar un hospital para llevar a su hijo o su hija tenga acceso al mejor precio posible y que una compañía hospital no pueda cobrar un costo injusto porque cada de nosotros trabajamos bien duro y no debería ser que alguien puede manipular la ley para beneficiarse en sí mismo cuando estamos hablando de la vida de un ser humano, un ser querido.
¿Puede dar un ejemplo de cómo ha afectado a una persona?
Puedo hablar del costo de un servicio en un hospital en el norte de California contra esa misma clase de servicio en el sur de California, Los Ángeles, por ejemplo. Hemos visto que la evidencia nos enseña que el precio de llevar a su hijo, esposa, a su ser querido a un hospital en el norte de California, en su promedio puede costar $90,000 más que mandar esa misma persona a un hospital en el sur de California. $90,000. ¿Qué no puede hacer una familia con tanto dinero? ¿Y por qué debería de tener que pagar una familia tanto más que otra familia solo porque vive unas millas en diferente dirección? Eso no es justo y no es legal.
Gracias.
Yeah. Any final question? Yes. No, go right ahead. They're with me. They're with me.
This is a different question. Kelly Ryan with CBS 13, also KPIX in San Francisco. Attorney General, there are some rumblings. What are you planning to do if the EPA softens its rules on vehicle air pollution?
Kelly, I think we made that very clear that California is moving forward. We're not interested in engaging in a race to the bottom. We've proven what you can do when you move forward, make progress in ways that are not just good for the health of your families, but the health of the environment, and quite honestly, for our economy. We didn't become the sixth largest economy in the world by just spectating or waiting for someone else to tell us how to do things. We went ahead and moved forward to figure out how to keep our air clean, our water clean, our families healthy, and our economy robust. And so we're going to move forward. We're going to protect those procedures, those policies, and those laws that let us move forward in ways that are forward-thinking so that we can leave the next generation of Californians a better place to not only live but to work and to keep California the economic engine for the country. And so we're intent on defending those national standards that have been established when it comes to emissions. We will do everything we can to fight to protect those standards, and we'll protect California's right to move forward for the 40 million people that live here so we can continue to be the country's economic engine,
Fighting the Trump administration in court.
whatever it takes. Yes.
I did have one follow-up on Sutter. This is Kathy Anderson again from the Sacramento Bee. I am curious about whether in a case like this you try to negotiate with a Sutter before you file the complaint, or is this a case where, you don't do that? I know sometimes that's possible, sometimes it isn't.
Yeah, and remember, this is a case that where the issue has preceded this filing. This is a matter well known to Sutter. There are litigants right now in court dealing with Sutter on some of the very same issues. We're now in because we're now doing this for the 40 million people of the state of California. What we seek is a little different from some of the other litigants, but this is not something new to Sutter. There have been, I can tell you, there have been many a conversation with companies like Sutter Health in all of these cases. When we took on Valero in that case I mentioned about the efforts by Valero to purchase the last independent oil distribution company in Northern California, I can tell you that there had been many communications between Valero and its people and the Department of Justice and others on these issues. So you always have these conversations, and the reason you end up filing a lawsuit is because it becomes clear that you're not going to make the progress you need to see. And so we certainly don't discuss everything with the company or the potential defendant in a case, but you certainly have conversations that precede any filing of an action. That's why you end up filing the action, because the conversations didn't lead to a good result.
And what is the outcome? What is a favorable outcome in this case? What is it that you want?
Well, I'll give you a general sense, and then I'll let Kathleen or Emilio give you a more specific sense of what some of our pleadings show. But I would simply tell you this. I don't want it to be that I find myself in Northern California needing to use a hospital and finding that in order to provide my loved one with the care that he or she may need, including life-saving care, that I end up having to spend $90,000 more simply to get it in California because I'm in the northern part versus in the southern part of the state. Because someone will be in the northern part of the state who will be less able to afford that than, say, the Attorney General for the state of California. And for that person, $90,000 could be the world. It could be the difference between that child you send to the hospital having an opportunity in the future of going to college. It could be the difference between you being able to retire in dignity. There is no reason why someone should have to pay so much more for a service simply because they're located in a different geographical location than another family in California. That's not right, and that's what we intend to change. maybe Kathleen or Amelia want to give you some specifics as well.
I would add to what the Attorney General has said that you're all aware, obviously, that in this country, unlike some others, healthcare is a market-based institution, and the idea is that competition will ultimately result in good services and competitive pricing. It depends on competition for that to happen. And what we have found, and what's alleged in the complaint, all 49 pages of it, is that the practices that Sutter has been able to insist upon have sapped the Northern California market of the competition that should be there. And what we aim to do in this litigation, our primary purpose really is to stop those practices and to see that competition is restored. And when it is, then prices will, under our system, under our market system, move back into competitive range. Both price and quality should benefit from that.
Amelia, I don't know if you wanted to add anything?
No, I have nothing to add to that.
Any other thoughts, questions? We'll close. Yes.
This is Anna with Kaiser Health News. I was wondering if there's anything else California can do in the meanwhile to protect consumers, either in the legislature or something.
One of the easiest things that consumers can do is report things that don't seem right. We rely on getting facts from those who've gone through this process. So if you find yourself paying what you believe is an unreasonable cost, and you've had an experience going elsewhere where the cost was less, that's important to know. And we're talking specifically here about Sutter Health, which is principally a hospital organization. They go beyond being a hospital. They've gone way beyond being just a hospital. But there are many other stakeholders and players in the healthcare market than just hospitals. And it would not surprise us if we find that there's a basis to examine some of the other stakeholders in the healthcare space and how they're conducting their business. And so getting that information to the Department of Justice, it shouldn't be that difficult, but it could go a long way in helping us prepare a case to defend the ability to have competitive markets, but more importantly, to make sure people are getting their money's worth when they go in on something as important as the health care of their family. Okay. Thank you all very much.